Welcome to the Enduro Method podcast. Enduro Method is an online strength and conditioning program built for those who ride by those who ride. We are professional coaches dedicated to building the best and most revolutionary off-the-bike training for dirt bikers around. We are offering a special discount for our podcast listeners. Use discount code EMPodcast22 for 50% off your first month. For more information, head to the description of this podcast where you can find the discount code and a link for more information and to sign up.
Nice. All right. And we're live.
Oh, Richard.
Josh Schaecher.
Yeah, there you go.
Nice. So I know you a little bit just from last year with you promoting US Hard Enduro, doing a bunch of the track stuff and being on the team. But maybe start out with a little bit of brief history, where you came from, how you got into it, and then how you got into promoting.
Right. So I grew up in Hollister, California, and we have a motorcycle park there in town, a state park that's like 3,000 acres big. So dirt bikes were part of my life from right away, and my dad rode and stuff. So we were always at Hollister Hills. And then that turned into me and my friends riding in high school and starting to race as we got a little bit older. And I was an off-road racer, but I raced all kinds of different disciplines, motocross and enduros and hare scrambles, and I guess that was it back then. But eventually met Colton Haker in high school, and we started hanging out because we both rode dirt bikes. And that took me, later on into trials, because he started doing trials and I started doing it with him. And then we were racing enduro cross, and I would try and race it during the day and then help him out as a buddy at night. And then that kind of turned me into his mechanic. And when he got really good, I became his mechanic on the Husqvarna factory racing team. Kind of just went through the growth of endurocross or becoming a professional with him as his mechanic on accident, just because he was my friend and I was helping him, wanted to help him get to the races, and I wanted to go to the races too. And eventually somehow turned it into the Hard Enduro, the mayor of Hard Enduro, as I've been called.
Nice. What was it about the Hard Enduro that got you interested in that?
Probably my favorite discipline of dirt bike riding that I've done. It just suits my style. I don't like going fast, but I like a good challenge, and I like kind of being miserable, and I feel like I could thrive when conditions are really shit. And like mud races when I was on a 125 were my favorite thing. So I think if you find a 125 rider that says mud race is his favorite thing, then you may have a Hard Enduro rider.
Nice. What was your first introduction to it? Was it racing, or was it being on the sidelines helping doing track stuff?
It was probably, I'd say trials actually is what made us think about Hard Enduro. We started riding trials bike. We saw Jeff Aaron do a trials show. Hollister had the 4th of July Independence Day rally, the biker rally that's been going on for 65 years or something. And Jeff would come do there and do his Red Bull trials demo. And I wanted to ride a trials bike from an early age because of that. And so when we got too big for our mini bikes, like our XR100s and 150s and 80s, we would take those out trialsing or Hard Enduro riding and go trail bashing. And then I think eventually just saw Last Man Standing, that race out in Texas. And then you see Erzberg, and endurocross became a thing kind of all at the same time. And when I finally got to go to Europe and get introduced to the what I consider the real deal over there, big events that are based on this Hard Enduro technique, that's probably when I was fully hooked.
And you were able to start playing a role working those events, right?
Yeah, I initially it was just because I was Colton's mechanic, and so first thing was probably Erzberg or Super Enduro, which was the indoor enduro cross series over there. And then started making friends over there after going to Erzberg, and eventually what they called the West Championship at that time, and we went to Portugal and some stuff in France and a few other things. But I stayed back and raced in between races. There was a local race in Austria I did, and then I went to Sea to Sky with Graham Jarvis's mechanic one year just for a holiday thing. and then figured out my way into being a track manager for Romaniacs. And that was like next level too, because then I was like, I really learned a lot working with those guys. Those guys, that's the most professional hard enduro there is in the world, in my opinion, because it's such a big event logistically, and really crossing the same trail twice. And yeah, that was and then I just wanted to bring it back to the US and improve what we were doing here. And I guess that was kind of at the tail end of my time as Haker's mechanic at Husqvarna. Is I saw like a need for these races we were going to be improved, and a lot of places I could help. And I wanted to do something different within the industry other than being a mechanic. And it kind of all fell into place when COVID happened and gave me a kick in the ass to do something different.
Right. What years were you doing track managing in Romania?
Last year, so 2020 and 21.
Okay.
Yeah. And
And
that's cool.
then,
That's really good experience. Like 6 weeks there, riding every day.
yeah, that's awesome. And when you were doing that and then came back, I mean, could imagine just from the outside looking in, Romaniac seems like it's one of the best put together. I've never personally been there, but uh, it just seems very well run. And like you're saying, so like being part of that event and then coming back to here where, let's see, in 20, I mean, at least there's a little bit of a hard enduro scene going on. It's starting to kind of pick up. What were the things that you thought you could really bring to this side right away?
Yeah, like you said, it was kind of picking up in 20. In up until 19, the race team had been sending Haker and I to races pretty consistently, like just random ones, go test them out, see how they were. Some were bigger than others, like the Silver Mountain race, Sticks and Stones. A long we went to a long time ago, but we'd kind of go like be test dummies for them. And Haker and I had a pretty good, strong opinion on what was wrong with each race, and that was kind of the easy way in. And yeah, like you said, what I learned in Romania was, I mean, I don't know, it's just the experience and the time you spend at all these other races. It's not so much just Romania, but stuff that a promoter that's new to putting on a hard enduro race has to put on a race for many years before he's going to figure that stuff out. And I had many years of experience, not necessarily as a promoter, but being the critic from the outside at a pretty high level, and then at a participants level, as well as a mechanical level. And then obviously my point of view that I have from Colton as well, and the other riders who are my friends. So I get all this information sitting at the mechanic at the end of the night at the dinner table. You can really retain a lot, and to help improve this kind of stuff, because I'm always sitting with.
Yeah, sorry, it broke up a little bit at the end, but basically able to get a bunch of information. It's kicking around in your head and you're thinking you can definitely help turn that around and promote and better the sport.
Yeah. If we had like, I think the first thing I said was like, if we had just got to this race like 2 days sooner and walked the course, we would have been able to tell these guys how to fix this course.
Right.
And it just, I don't know, some of the promoters, they didn't, in the beginning, they didn't really know how hard they could push these guys. And a lot of the races were too easy for hard enduro races. And that's pretty easy to fix once you give these guys an understanding of what the racers are capable of. And that's another thing that, spending time growing up with Haker, and Cody Webb was somebody I got to ride with a lot when I was younger. We're from the same area. So I had to start getting a good understanding of what these guys are capable of, even if I couldn't accomplish it myself. And I would always try to. So I understood the amateur level.
Right.
Yeah. So that, which is super important too, is having a balance. It's something, I guess that's a good thing I took from Romaniacs. They have 5 classes, 5 completely different, almost completely different loops. And it's to give everybody a proper hard enduro experience.
Right.
And that's a huge thing I want to do, because I want more amateurs to come into our races. I don't want to scare people away, and we can challenge people without scaring them away and ruining their bikes. At least in the amateur class.
Yeah, totally. I mean, just in the last couple of years, I think not only is the level just keep increasing monumentally, even at the top And then, that's bleeding down. Instead of just the top 5 guys, maybe that's now the top 15 who can ride the top level course. But then from, I don't know, 20 to the next 40 back, it's a little bit stepped down. They might be able to struggle through some of the stuff, but they're not riding it. And then from 40 back is another level down. And so I can't, it's a very hard to be able to present a course that challenges everybody without creating massive bottlenecks or possibly putting people in positions they shouldn't be in as far as talent, injury, and skill level and all that stuff. So it's a monumental task for sure.
Yeah, and that you hit the nail on the head. I mean, if we can present the right format to give everybody their money's worth and the proper level challenge, then we'll do that. It's tough because Hard Enduro has so many different formats, but I also think that's one of the greatest parts of Hard Enduro. So we try and stick with allowing all these different formats, but all these formats allow those challenges within them, kind of like the ones you're talking about, where you're giving the amateurs something that's not over their head while challenging the pros enough to stick it to them. And I like what you said about the different groups of, the top 10 are now at a higher level than they once were. And then beneath them, the 11th through 21st and so on like that. I think those groups are really growing, and where we're missing the growth is in the back 50% of the classes and getting those introductory Hard Enduro riders and showing them why we like it. And I mean, like why I feel like I'll be a Hard Enduro rider longer than anybody would ever be a motocross rider.
Right.
And, I met a kid that was like one of our youth riders this year who literally told me, I want to be a Hard Enduro. I'm done riding GNCC and I want to ride Hard Enduro because I want to race for longer or along those lines. And I was like, oh, that's awesome, man. I'm going to remember that.
Right.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Well, I think there's so much truth to it. And at least, especially for us, right? I'm out here in Idaho, like closest motocross track for me is an hour at least drive. And even then it's probably not that super great of a track. But I got woods right out the back door. I mean, that's what I want to go ride single track and hard stuff. So the Hard Enduro is just, it's kind of naturally gravitated. And also I apparently like to suffer and all those things. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Everybody doesn't have to be like us, but I know there's a lot more that want to be like us.
Yeah. Cool. Let's talk about a little bit about last year. Last year, so you did something similar for a couple of the races back in, I guess it'd be 20, right?
Yep.
And then anyways, go ahead.
21.
21. Yeah.
And 20. Shoot. I helped out at races over the last, I left Husqvarna in 19.
Okay.
20. I'm sorry. I did leave in 20. And that's when I really started like diving into helping the races out.
Okay. And on that year, you kind of popped around for a couple of them and then wasn't able to kind of finish the series.
That's right.
And then in 21 came back with more of a full-time role, essentially.
Yeah. In fact, I mean, I wouldn't even say we're in 22, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah.
I would, yeah. Okay. I would say that in 21, I was really the year that I just dabbled in it. I went to the first 3 rounds, and the program I was part of I wasn't super keen on it. And I left and went to Romaniacs for the second time.
Okay.
Instead of continuing on with the Hard Enduro Championship as it was in the US at that time. And then I was able to get in on the restructure of the whole thing for 22 towards the end of 21. And that's when Musgrove got on board and fired me back up, and we took it on. And Matt is the ringleader at this point, I would say. And we're partners in this whole deal of trying to grow the Hard Enduro series. So
cool. So what sticks out about 22 this last year with the East and West and the US Hard Enduro Championship?
Right. I mean, I got it first and foremost, it was the most fun year of dirt bike racing I've ever had. And I feel like that's saying a lot, since I won a lot of championships as Colin's mechanic and got to travel the world. And this was a little bit cooler because we were kind of just doing it on our own and not making it up as we go, but it was new for all of us to be involved at that level. me, Musgrove, Max Gersten, and our media crew, Blake and Rachel. And, there's a few other people that supported us behind that. But that was the main crew that went to all the races and helped make it better. And I think that's why it was so much more fun for me this year, is having that group of people. We all kind of had the same mission, and that was just to make them bigger and better, and as much as we could, and as little sleep as we needed, and on the smallest budget possible, across the board for all of us, just to get through all 8 of the rounds. And it's awesome to come out of it and be fired up to do it again instantly. That's like something I wouldn't say I really felt in dirt bike racing before. I've definitely been motivated to go back to racing with Schaecher after winning championships, but like to be at the final dinner, at the final race, and pooped out beyond my feet can handle, and still being like, all right, guys, so let's talk about next year. That's cool. That's why it was the most fun for me this year.
That's great. Yeah, I'm really stoked you guys are doing it. I thought I had a blast last year. Only got to the West races, but I don't know. At some point, maybe we'll cross the border and go over to the East side in the future. But just from a venue perspective, what was your favorite venues from last year?
That's tough because there's so, like, I picked them apart, right? Like, I've spent so much time at all of them, and I go West Coast. I still might give it to Grinding Stone because it's so unique and it scares me so much. But like Billings was so much fun and so different. I really liked that. And then on the East Coast, I really liked the Ohio race. And it was, again, I think it was like the most crashes I had anywhere in the series, and it was the hardest for me to ride. But I think it was what I gained there over the week and a half or whatever that made me appreciate it. And really, it produced some of the best racing we had all year too, with Tristan and Ryder like passing each other multiple times a lap, and I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, no, it looked like a lot of fun. It seems like, how do you feel the venues line up from like a technical perspective on the East? They all seem a little bit more similar, whereas the West, like you were saying, I mean, we went from Grinding Stone to Billings, which couldn't be more different.
Yeah.
And then, Donner, again, so rocky and pretty different. And then, into North Idaho.
Yeah, for sure. Those are all 4. I mean, all 4 are pretty different. I guess Silver and Donner have similarities, being ski mountains and high mountain, but they're still totally different animals. And
right.
as a racer, and the East Coast, I could see some more consistency. I mean, like the Pennsylvania ones, there's 2 of them, 30 minutes apart, 30 miles apart. I noticed the rocks are different. The riders noticed the rocks are different, but it's still just a shitload of rocks that are long and grueling to ride. And then Ohio, nothing was slipperier than Ohio. Yeah, I don't know, man. It just depends on which coast you're from. Determines which coast is going to be harder for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely seems like if you're used to riding Moab and all that stuff, then Grinding Stone's not too bad. But then you go to Silver Mountain and you don't know what hit you.
Yeah, and for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, even especially those East Coast guys, I felt like we went back east and we got to really see Ryder and like Danny Lewis shine. You could tell that like home field advantage, or
Right.
Cooper, Abbott, and Grinding Stone. Like you could tell he feels good there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So coming off of last year, going into this year, are you kind of in the middle of sorting out schedule and venues and all that stuff?
Yep, my notebook gets a lot of use. I got a provisional schedule right there. Real quick look at it. For sure, it's super important because I mean it should have already been done on our end, because it helps us get sponsorships. The later we try and get sponsorships, the less likely we are to get them. But we're also like at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to our world in scheduling, and I mean that like we got the world championship and off-road hard enduro scheduled to compete against, and they're not really considering what we're doing or calling us, even though we have riders trying to chase both championships.
Right.
Super Enduro World Championship is another thing that conflicts with us, and we kind of have to wait and be at their wait for them to come out with their schedule. We're even trying to make sure things are as minimally conflicting with GNCCs and enduros as possible, but that's lower on our priorities as well. But and then endurocross eventually plays a part, and I've spent a lot of time with the endurocross guys, so I like to think, but still, like, they still get priority because they're a national championship and we're still just a regional championship.
So what's that necessarily mean if you're a regional championship compared to national?
That's it's a labeling thing. It's like teams team sponsorship deals can be a lot sweeter if their riders are riding national championships.
Okay.
And even though, like, our regional championship that we offered last year is the premier hard enduro championship in America right now, other than like SEER racing, which is pretty badass too, but we're going west to east, so we're kind of like the biggest. But because we're not a national, even though we're the premier championship, sponsors may not pay those teams this much in the end, and that's a kind of a trickle down. The teams want to see it. The guy at the desk wants to see a national championship on his rider's title rather than a regional east or west title. So that's something we're working with in the AMA. They consider us, a 1-year championship at this point because that's how long this group of people has been together doing it. And so I understand where they're coming from on that point. I'd love to be a national championship because I think we brought that type of experience to the riders, and that's the kind of work we put in. And we go from the West Coast to the East Coast, which I don't think any other off-road national championships even do that. So we'll get there, and that'll help us.
So what does it take on their part to see just kind of consistency, essentially like a credit score, like you're just trying to build some credibility over time, and then just support from an outside sponsor, support from amateurs, from teams, or what?
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but I would go with your first kind of idea is that we're just like, we need a good resume, and we don't really have one. I was just a mechanic 3 years ago, so that's unfortunately how I think I'm perceived. But we got to build our resume and show them that we can do this, a few times is what they're mainly looking for.
Right. I don't know how much you can talk about the schedule, but is there pretty consistent venues from last year to this year? There's some new ones still doing the East-West split.
Yeah, I'd say we only lost a couple of venues from the East and West, but we added even more. We're trying to, at this point, pull about 6 premier rounds out so we can make an overall champion out of these premier rounds. While we also want to support as many other hard enduros as we can beyond that, but we want to just dedicate this overall title for the pros and to chase across from east to west. And then we also want to provide a proper west and a proper east as well, which will be the same races out of the 6 premier, but there'll be even more to do other than those 6 premier. So let's say we're looking at like 12 races. 6 of them are chased for the pro overall, and the rest of them are going to be going towards east and west regional championships.
Okay, so essentially you'd have like 3 premiers on the west, 3 premiers on the east, and the pros that were after the championship would need to hit those 6 to be in the running.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And then we're trying to strategically schedule these regionals races in between them to help them all get hit, as we're driving around the country racing. We want to make it as easy as possible for everybody to go to all the races. But when it comes to these pro race teams and some of those types of situations, it's best if we just streamline this east west, pick the premier rounds. They can't do 15 rounds. We want to support 15 rounds. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I guess we're trying to kind of create this regional national thing without actually being a national championship. And we're trying to figure out how to do that. And that's another big hold up on getting the schedule out, is figuring out how it all works logistically.
Right. Yeah. And I can imagine, I mean, if you're, a pro's trying to hit and you're potentially maybe not a factory sponsored person, like trying to drive from east to west every other week or every week to make all these rounds is pretty insane.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And so we only want to like make that task done by the guys that can afford to do so, but we still want to make it as easy as possible for everyone involved. Because like I said, I've been in it as a racer, as a mechanic, and now as an organizer and crew member too. It counts for all of us, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. What are some of the big corrections you're looking to make to the series this year from last year, if you can think of any?
I don't know. I'd say it'd be race by race individually, like stuff we learned at each event and what my notebook has saved from this year. Probably for us, like the biggest thing, and it's the hardest thing is probably our schedule. But like I said, so much of it's dictated by other people and other things going on. And then there's Mother's Day, and nobody wants to make their mom go to a race on Mother's Day, but that was a great race weekend because nobody else is racing on that weekend. Probably our schedule is what we're improving the most. And I think by doing this, allowing just regionals to kind of happen throughout the year, whether they really fit into that travel schedule of the premier rounds, hopefully can make the schedule more manageable for everybody. So if you want to just chase the West Count round series, you can just stay on the West. And if you want to just chase an East series, you can just stay on the East. But if you want this premier overall, then you're going to have to travel to all of them. But it's not necessary to keep racing and keep gaining points towards the championship.
Right. No, that makes sense. With the I mean, kind of back to the courses and course splits and difficulty level, like you were saying, I mean, it's got to be different for every format, right? I mean, if you're doing a 4 hour hard enduro, you're going to have different contingencies and things that matter than if you're doing a, multiple, maybe 1 hour, hour and a half races in a day. So how do you, from a course director, more or less standpoint, look at that and try and figure out what's best for each different race?
Yeah. Some of it just comes from my experience from being there in the past. But as you said, if it's a 4 hour single moto, it's kind of my least favorite because it makes it the hardest to give everyone their best experience because you have to at least have splits, which means people are still going to ride in traffic. If it's a I mean, some races are only one lap, but my favorite is like if you can have an amateur race separate from a pro and expert race because most of our A riders anyway. Oh, I found it. Fucking A, baby.
Nice.
Okay, we're back. My dad calling me. Where were we at?
A rider.
A riders riding the
I think
pro
you're saying your
Okay.
favorite race is the one amateurs and then pros, and then you said something about A, and then I lost you.
Yeah, I think my favorite format is a knockout format because everybody kind of has to ride the same thing. Amateurs get plenty of opportunity to ride, but the course, in my opinion, on a knockout format would progressively get harder. So as the course gets harder, riders get knocked out, and then by the end, the amateurs that are pooped and tired are watching the pros ride the main event. And so they're getting a good experience because they got to ride and they got to watch the pros race, and the pros no longer have the slow guys in their way, and they're already a little bit beat up from doing all that other racing. So it kind of takes the edge off of them to help even out the playing field for anybody that made it through all those other qualifiers.
Right. What races were there that had that format this year? I mean, I feel like most of the West was a little bit more of a longer one race duration.
Well, I'm in Roar. You definitely get the knockout format. That's in Pennsylvania, so you can go to that one.
Okay.
Yeah, King of the Moto, or Page Grinding Stone was a single moto, and I'm hoping we're gonna do that a little different this year.
Oh, nice.
I think splits are easier to manage as well. TKO is also obviously a knockout format. I'm kind of blanking right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was trying to think. I know I was kind of following the East series, but I don't remember. They all look the same when you're just watching.
Yeah, I guess it was more of an East thing because even though Ohio didn't take, they knocked riders out as the motos went on. I think everybody rode had three opportunities to race in Ohio, where you got progressively knocked out over time. And that shotgun hard enduro in Pennsylvania as well was like that.
Okay.
Yeah, multi motos. They didn't take everybody into the next moto. Yeah.
Sweet.
But I love all the different formats. It's just wrangling them all in and making them make sense. Like whether it's if you're gonna have a multi-moto thing and you get entered in that first race based on where you signed up, and then you qualify into the next race, your starting position in the next race should be based off of your finish in that first race. You shouldn't have to start in the same position based on your sign up. That's what qualifying is for. And sometimes that's just as simple as that, is fixing something at a race, is saying, hey, if you're going to do 3 motos and the first one's starting position is based off of when you signed up, the second one should be based on what you finished in the first one, because you had to work through all those guys that you signed up after, just to even out the playing field until that main event, because the whole goal of qualifying is to get that starting order correct so we don't have to battle through people that are slower than us. We can just battle the race course or the riders that are as fast as us.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's just, yeah, I imagine it's difficult to manage.
Yeah.
Which courses that are returning or venues that are returning are you most excited to see what is put together from last year? Maybe let's start with the West series.
Definitely the Silver Kings,
Right.
because I think James is super fired up because he didn't even really leave the mountain. He left the mountain, went to Romania, and then went straight back to the mountain. So I'm sure we're going to see a massive leap there, for the better. James is a doer and he wants to make that thing badass. So definitely most excited about that one on the West Coast, I'd say. East Coast, probably Battle of the Goats, just because we missed it for a year. That was one of my favorite races that we used to go to back in the day, and weren't able to get it in the schedule this year. So looking forward to going back to that. I really enjoy all of them. I don't know if I can announce all the new ones yet. Hopefully we'll all be hearing it pretty soon. Maybe we should have waited like 2 more days until we can actually announce it. There's going to be some returning favorites. We're still trying to work with organizing a race in Hawaii, which is a big deal to me because I went over to Hawaii and raced this year, and they have, for as big of an area as it is, they have some of the most good hard enduro riders for such a small area that I've ever experienced. And I want to give those guys more opportunity to race against all of our racers to show what they're capable of. And, another good thing about if we got a race going over there is we can create another TKO qualifier. And that's a really good reason to get these guys invited over to the mainland and race us some more too.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What kind of, I'd imagine it's fairly wet and slippery.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of Ohio, like kind of miserably slippery, just clay packing up. It's one of the only places that I used go from a dead stop in third gear just to be able to move. So it's slippery like that, and roots, just endless roots, and it's pretty warm. I wouldn't say it's quite as humid as I've been in some of the places on the East Coast, but it's pretty damn close. So it's got that humidity to hit you with as well.
Great. Well, I don't know. I'm super stoked for next year, and should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it. You got anything else you want to add about the series or crew or anything else?
No, I don't think so. Finish up this Endurocross season, keep networking with everybody. I'm still going to all the Endurocross races with the McCarthy family, helping them out with their bikes and stuff. And it's really nice for me to go visit everyone and keep the networking going. Hopefully we'll see you at an Endurocross race maybe. That's our it's kind of the same race family, I saw a lot of new faces from Hard Enduro that I hadn't seen in Enduro Cross yet, and I was really happy to see it. So definitely still want to encourage everybody to come out to the Enduro Cross races. They're doing a good job, and um, it's our same guys just riding 4 strokes for the most part. Some of them still on 2 strokes.
It does, for a while it didn't have much interest in me. And then recently, yeah, I think not only that, but the skill set's so it's transferable at this point, you know?
Skill set is, but you know what? This is where it may be really good for you and interesting is the fitness is so different. It's a
Yes.
it's a freaking bitch slap of 2 minutes of riding that you'll never feel anywhere else, any other type of riding. Like it's kind of miserable, but that's what we like because we're stupid hard enduro riders. And it's a heart rate shock on your body that it would be good. It'd be good for a guy like you to help master with these guys.
Oh no, yeah, it's a completely different strategy, philosophy, training regimen to, get yourself in that kind of shape. I was just riding with Evan Ass last weekend and he was giving me shit and telling me I just need to get down there.
Yeah, good. He's come out and raced, and
Yeah.
I don't know if Evan really did like the national enduro cross as much. I'm sure he had been to one before this year, but super pumped to see him showing up and doing them consistently this year. I guess he's planning on still coming back to more.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. And Casey showed up for one too, or two, maybe. Maybe Casey raced two.
I think so.
Yeah, that's always funny. It's like when those two guys are on the track, they're actually just racing each other. They're not even racing everybody else. It was better for Evan to not have Casey there because he raced better because he wasn't just like, waiting for Casey like he always has to do to pass him again.
That's funny.
But yeah, just in the heart of enduro cross training here, Chocolate Mountain Ranch in San Diego. I had Tristan Hart training here today, Johnny Walker, Dustin McCarthy, Gavin McCarthy, Spencer Wilton, Will Riordan, and I think that was it today. I got a Colton Hager Championship bike up on the wall in my workshop. So we're
Wow.
in SoCal Enduro Cross training headquarters right now.
That's awesome. How many more to go for this season?
3 more. So we made it to the halfway point. We're going to Prescott this weekend for the Enduro Cross, and we have a weekend off. And then we're going to Boise, and then Reno a few weeks after, just before Thanksgiving, I believe, or maybe right after Thanksgiving. I don't know.
Awesome. Then it's full throttle into the US Hard Enduro series.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to next week after I get back from Prescott. I'm going to another venue that we're trying to put on the schedule in Texas for next year. With a really good group of people. It's a venue that's used and supported by a club that does a hare and hound that's pretty popular and has a good reputation. So I'm stoked to go check it out, and hopefully they don't see any rattlesnakes because that's what I always think of riding hard enduro in Texas.
Right. You can't think about that.
Dude, yeah, well, I've been like this, a couple feet away climbing up rocks when you're trying to make a new line, and then there's a snake you're staring in the face and it's rattling at you. It's hard not to think about anymore.
Yeah.
I carry protection, man. I got cornered at TKO this year by a rattlesnake. And
Really?
I'd never seen one in Tennessee, and he was pissed. And he's literally on part of the course that I had already pruned to make a connection for TKO 2, which is the race right before the main event, and it's a really hard hill climb. And it was just like he just wouldn't get out of my way, and I spent 20 minutes just moving him off of the trail to be able to mark it and everything. So yeah, so it's not part of being a track manager for US Hard Enduro, but I'm not scared.
Yeah, that's the only benefit of 8 months of winter.
Yeah, that's true, man. I never see him up there.
No.
But hey, how about in Billings? There was bear dens everywhere. And dead animals laying in front of them.
Yeah. It's always something somewhere.
Yeah, everything Hard Enduro is trying to kill you.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Part of the reason we love it. I don't know. We're mental. I even did Red Bull Straight Rhythm last weekend. It's all dirt bikes all the time.
That's awesome.
I'd like to shout out to the whole Red Bull Straight Rhythm crew. That was a really cool experience. I'm glad I got to get on board with that. I just kind of helped in the parking lot, managing the riders. Well, not the parking lot, the pits. It's not a parking lot. It's for pitting. That's right. That was like what I was managing, and then getting the riders on and off the track when they needed to be.
Awesome.
But I appreciate you reaching out to me. I'm sorry it was took me a while to get it all linked up and get a time going, but as that's why I threw all the my schedule at you real quick. So that's my excuse. I'm a busy guy, and but I like promoting it and supporting it, and I'm happy to see you guys at the races, Enduro Method and the whole deal.
Yeah, no. Yeah, really appreciate taking the time. It's been great. Stoked for what you guys are doing. It's really cool. I mean, even in the first Hard Enduro I ever did was in 2018, and it was Matt Musgrove put it on at the one in Reno.
Endurofest,
yeah, Enduro Fest. And ever since that style, I was like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah, it's cool. I was listening to your podcast with Joe Nemeth, and kind of his the way he got into Hard Enduro too. It's just like, man, we go out there and we do it once and we're like, oh, this is kind of my style. Like, this is a thing. We're suffering and everybody else is suffering and we're all having fun. And I mean, whatever you take from Hard Enduro, that's what I take from it. I like it. Everybody needs to come out and try it, and I'm gonna make that first. I'm trying to make that first time experience for all the introductory riders into Hard Enduro a little bit better and a little bit easier, instead of just going out and yarding your bike off of cliffs. You don't have to do that. We're going to give you a good challenge. It'll be safe. You're going to break your levers probably still and dent your pipe, but it's not that bad. It's just cosmetic.
Yeah. No, I think that's so important because it does. I mean, you watch the highlight reels alone of Hard Enduro and it's so intimidating. But at the end of the day, I mean, amateurs are what are going to grow the sport in the future.
Yeah.
And so being able to present them something that's hard, challenging, maybe a little bit dangerous, but not overly much. And that's what keeps you coming back.
That's right. Yeah. We don't want to scare them away. We want them to come back.
Yeah.
Grinding stone highlight videos are the worst for scaring people away.
Oh man, I remember watching the toilet bowl beta, the one that ticked off that lip, I think before we did the first year.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit, what are they sending us up? And then you did it. It was, there were some sketchy spots, but it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, then it was in the race the next year, but didn't have any highlights because it didn't have a big old crash on it.
Yeah.
They made it. But Jim's definitely got a good plan for getting those amateurs out there and not having to yard down beta bowl. So we'll be all right.
That's great. Right on. Well, again, man, appreciate the time. Stoked for this year, and yeah, we'll catch up soon.
Yeah, good talk. Nice talking to you. Thanks for having me on.
You bet.
All right, dude.